Resident Evil 4.
Considered one of the greatest games of all time. It changed the gaming landscape as we know it, and was so good that it even got a remake. Not that being good is what you need to get a remake, it's mostly to make money. But anyway, was Resident Evil 4 so loved because it was too easy? No, probably not. That's clickbait. But I do want to talk about the game's different difficulties and everything surrounding it, so I had to get you in the door. Did it work? I hope so, and if not, please complain in the comments down below. All of the mean comments on my last Resident Evil 4 video may have hurt my soul, but they also helped me in the algorithm, so like and subscribe. Alright, let's go ahead and get this out of the way early. Resident Evil 4 has an adaptive difficulty, specifically on easy and normal. Basically, the better you do, the harder the game gets, and the worse you do, the easier it gets. Do better, more enemies will spawn, some will do increased damage, they'll act more aggressive, you'll get less health items, etc. Do worse, the opposite. Less enemies, more health items, more ammunition. Ashley's AI actually improves.
What a gamer.
Sadly, that's a joke, but wouldn't that just be great? Ah, good old Ashley. Good old useless Ashley. There's a really good video by Game Maker's Toolkit that I recommend you go watch after this video. It's called What Capcom Doesn't Tell You About Resident Evil 4. There are only 3 difficulties in the original Resident Evil 4. Easy, normal, and professional. Professional is the hardest difficulty and doesn't have the adaptive changes, but hard is subjective. One of the most popular categories of speedruns in Resident Evil 4 is New Game Professional runs. I'm sure it being the hardest difficulty has a part in that, but you might be surprised to know that it's also because it does make the game easier in its own way. I'll talk more about that later on in the video though, so stick around! For this video, I did a playthrough on each difficulty with slight variations in the way I played. This gave me an overall look at how the game treats you on each difficulty selected. I'm going to cover each difficulty starting with easy. Even though I've been playing this game for roughly 20 years, I think this time is the first time I've ever played it on easy.
Damn, boy.
And I also found a new optional cutscene that I'd never seen before. Also, this video is a spiritual successor of sorts to my first video on the recent Resident Evil 4 Remake's difficulty. I recommend that you watch that before or after watching this video, because there are some things that I only cover in one video or the other. I did my best to cover everything I thought of in this video, but if I did miss something, why don't you share it with me in the comments below? I do my best to read all of them. Haha, I said doo-doo. Having said that, let's window dive our way into the video. Oh my god! Oh, there's glass everywhere! Oh, this shit hurts! Why the fuck did I do that? Ah, easy mode, the bane of tryhards everywhere. Enjoy a game on easy mode and someone will tell you how that means you wouldn't have survived in the trenches of Normandy.
You suck.
Apparently not every version of Resident Evil 4 even has an easy mode. The PAL and Japanese versions of the GameCube and PS2 releases did, but most, if not all, of the NTSC re-releases except the PC HD release don't have it. If anyone has the game on the most recent console re-releases, you can confirm or deny this in the comments below. I actually wish these easy modes had existed when I'd first played the game. Not because I ever thought that the game was too difficult, but the mode changes the experience enough that playing first on easy might actually enhance the following normal and professional playthroughs. Not only do you start the game with the shotgun in your inventory, and you can hold additional ammo for the shotgun, but whole rooms are skipped, making the game shorter overall. Apparently, the adaptive difficulty mechanic is still active on easy mode, but it is adjusted to max out at a lower high than on normal. So say if normal maxes out at 10, easy mode maxes out at 8. My experience on easy mode was strange, honestly. I wanted to see exactly how fast I could beat the game and how few times I would die while doing so. As I played, it felt like the adaptive difficulty on easy jumps around a lot and changes more frequently than it does on normal on a moment-to-moment basis. Enemies would go from dying in like 3 hits to suddenly having their heads pop to becoming bullet sponges in the span of one fight. This led to some funny moments since the stuttability of enemies was nearly all the way up, so I'd just shoot enemies and they'd dance around like a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon character. I'd also like to add that on easier difficulties, it definitely feels less like you're fighting elderly people riddled with terrifying zombie parasites, and more like you're fighting overly aggressive victims of dementia. It's kind of funny, but it seems that the part of the game that was changed the most for easy mode is the castle. A lot of the hardest rooms in the game are still in it, including the water hall and the gun turret room, so what they removed felt pretty random. The key room at the start of the castle is taken out. The wolf labyrinth is as well in the middle of the castle. You don't even have to get both grails in the grail segment before the ballroom area, and you get to skip the entire clock tower segment not long after that. It's not very long, so it doesn't even really matter. I won't spoil every little change if you want to see what they've changed for yourself. I just wanted to give an idea of the type of changes that the easy mode makes. The castle is the longest section of the entire game, so it does make sense that they would change that for the easy mode, but it's interesting that it's the only part of the game where they removed whole sections. The other parts that are changed in both the village and later on the island are more minor changes, like number of enemies and things like that, as you can see here at the very beginning, when instead of fighting 3 enemies, you just fight 2. I only died twice in my entire playthrough on easy. Once because there was a QTE during Salazar's boss fight that happened right as he was doing an instant kill attack, so there was almost nothing I could have done. And the second death is because I kind of stopped paying attention for a moment during Krauser's QTE knife fight, so that one is like completely my fault. Having said that, even on easy, you get the occasional goofy hit, like, oh, I just came down off this ladder and this fuckface happened to start throwing a fucking thing at me while I was climbing down, so Leon just takes a sickle to the face. Communism! All hail the parasite proletariat! So I've realized it doesn't matter the difficulty. I fucking hate the chopper segment, and I also still don't like the beginning of the It fight. That doesn't even really have anything to do with difficulty, I just wanted to get it out there. Even on easy, both of these segments are incredibly annoying and tedious. And the Krauser fight. I hate that it feels like the best way to deal with the Krauser fight is to just do the knife cheese. Honestly, the whole lead up to the end of the game kind of stinks in my opinion. I don't think that's new or a particularly brave opinion. I think a lot of fans of the game have always had a problem with a lot of the island segment. And to cap off the island segment and end the game, we fight Sadler, and Sadler is the same on almost every difficulty. Just not necessarily hard, just a tedious and not very fun fight. By the time I finished the game on easy mode, I'd done so in a little over 4 hours and only had 2 deaths, as I said earlier, both of which were equally goofy. It definitely isn't like baby mode easy, but if you've played a ton of action games on higher difficulties, it won't be much of a challenge at all. I still think it's a fair challenge though if you don't play many action games, and I think it's a great way to actually experience Resident Evil 4 for the first time. Something that I don't get to talk about often is I love when games make the experience different between different difficulties or playthroughs, and the changes are small on easy, but I think going from easy to normal or professional will actually be a nice experience because of the different rooms and different number of enemies and things like that that you get to face. All in all, easy mode is fine. It's cool, it's fine, it's easy mode. That's everything on easy. Time to go normie mode. Normal mode is the mode I played on most of my life when playing Resident Evil 4, at least until like 2014. I was having fun playing on normal still, so I just didn't see any reason in changing the difficulty either way. It also features the most well-tuned adaptive difficulty scale. If you die or take enough hits, things change slowly over time, almost to the point where it isn't even noticeable unless you're just doing really bad. It's why I pointed out how weird it was that I could seemingly feel and see the changes happening so frequently when playing on easy. If you do well enough, you'll actually end up playing on an approximation of professional, which is the hardest difficulty, but every hit or death adjusts it in time, so it's hard to ever really know what difficulty you're truly playing as. For this playthrough, I tried to summon up the soul of my long-dead 10-year-old self and play the game as I would have in 2005 for the first time. I remember I didn't use any of the shop rocket launchers, and if I did use the rocket launcher that you get in that little display case, I didn't use it well, so I basically killed every boss without using a rocket launcher. I also stuck with the Red 9 and Broken Butterfly because they were 2 of my favorite guns as a kid. I died about 8 times in all on the normal playthrough, You'd think after playing this game for so long that I'd have a flawless run, but no, and there's a few reasons for that actually. Very good ones. One, because I'm just bad at video games, and that's okay. That's not how I base my value in life on if I'm good at video games. And two, I was also playing less carefully, because the only limitation I'd given myself was beating the bosses without the rocket launcher. This is the standard experience. The rooms that are removed from easy are added back in on normal, so you get the whole picture this time around. There's slightly less treasure and ammo drops as well. And of course, the health and ammo drops change based off the adaptive difficulty, so you know, the more hits you take, the more you die, the more health and ammo you get. But even with that in mind, I don't think you'll ever really worry about ammo or health on normal. Overall, the game is incredibly well balanced on normal, especially if you play it the way it is meant to be played, by reloading every time you die from the checkpoints at the start of the room. Because of that, I don't have much to say about normal. The way the game plays can range from as easy mode or as hard as professional. The adaptive difficulty is made to give you the optimal experience, with just enough challenge and just enough ease that you never really feel like the game is too hard or too easy. Like I said at the start, I can't recommend enough the Game Maker's Toolkit video on this subject. Anyway, I think it's time that we get a bit more professional. Fun fact, the game won't let you play professional unless you wear a suit and tie while you play. Professional is only unlocked after you beat normal difficulty, and is only for the truest of gamers. Isn't that right, Neko Arc? She's my wife. On professional, there is no adaptive difficulty. Everything is set to 10 on that adaptive difficulty scale and stays there. Enemies do the max amount of damage, have the max amount of health, are maxed on aggression and movement, and archers maximally get on my fucking nerves. But even with everything set to the highest setting, there are still benefits to this technically harder difficulty. Remember when I said that speedrunners typically prefer to play on the professional difficulty? I hope you do, because that was just at the start of the video, which wasn't very long ago. If you can't remember that far back, maybe lay off TikTok for a few days. The reason speedrunners prefer to play on professional is because of one thing: consistency. When you play on normal or easy, the adaptive difficulty settings makes the game harder to predict, which for speedrunners is not good. It isn't necessarily bad. People love to speedrun roguelikes, but if you can achieve a level of consistency, you're also more likely to achieve consistently better times in speedruns. Enemies are more aggressive, but they'll always be that aggressive, which makes it easier to predict their behavior. You'll always know the number of enemies a room has, the amount of health enemies have, unless they have a plaga inside them, and the amount of damage you need to do to an enemy to take them down. For speedrunning, or even someone like me who just plays the game a lot, it's actually nice to have this consistency. Yes, it feels good on easy or normal when you one-shot pop an enemy's head off, but it also feels less good when you're used to enemies acting a certain way, and this leads to you taking unnecessary damage, or the worst thing, a death.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Professional also has the standard changes that one would expect to a harder difficulty. Less ammo and health drops to the point that you do want to at least try to make your shots count. I don't think you'll ever completely run out of ammo unless you're just really bad, but your favorite guns will definitely run dry every now and then. Krauser's fight is still absolute bullshit, and every other boss fight is just as tedious on professional as the other difficulties. The only other changes that I can think of are the fact that you can't get the tactical vest on professional. You also get more money because of the lack of extra ammunition and health. I'm guessing that's a balancing thing. And the rocket launcher is still as affordable on every other difficulty because the merchant is a real one.
Thank you.
Speaking of affordable, I hope you can afford to watch more of this video, because up next, we've got something a little different.
Damn, boy, he's thick!
As I said at the start, for each playthrough I played a little bit differently to really check out the difficulty as someone who has played the game so much over the years. On easy, I did a sort of speed run. On normal, I tried to play as normal as possible, like I did when I played the first time. And for professional, I did a limited saves run, because in the remake, you have to do a limited saves run to get an S+. I thought about setting a time limit as well, but decided against it because I didn't really know what a reasonable time limit would be. So I based my challenge on the S Plus requirements from the remake without a timer. The Resident Evil 4 remake had 16 chapters and allowed you 15 saves. The original had 19 subchapters, so I allowed myself 18 saves. It was a fun little challenge until it wasn't. There was the usual bits and bobs, like taking a random hit every now and then, and Ashley being Ashley, and also inventory management! There isn't really much to say about the start of the playthrough. I'd say the beginning of Resident Evil 4 is one of the most consistent parts in the entire game. It's just pure fun, and I didn't have too much trouble doing it. I saw a cart full of bodies, threw some grenades, did some fish-based inventory management! As any good fisherman should. The first real hitch in the road I hit was on Chapter 2-3, when I got killed by the village chief and had to start from the very beginning of the chapter. Annoying, but nothing major. I just had to replay the Chainsaw Sisters and all that kind of shit. I flew back through it pretty smoothly and made my way into the castle. So yeah, the village segment went really well. I can't really say I complain much. Yes, I did take some hits, but I kind of like sped through that shit. Once in the castle, I managed to get through the catapult segment without much hassle, which is nice. Hassle castle. I used to dislike this segment, but it isn't that bad. I'd honestly say the remake's catapult segment is like 10 times worse. I think the worst thing that happened on this run was Ashley getting punched right in the face. I flew through the next few rooms and went directly into the infamous water hall, which I managed to beat on the first try. I'm very proud of this because I usually have a habit of getting beheaded by scythes at this part, and I didn't, but I did have a pretty close call. In the next chapter, though, I wouldn't be so lucky. After playing around in a sewer and killing a Spencer's key holder, I really started to lose my head. Repeated the chapter and plodded on my way. The only notable thing that happened next was that I got tentacle whipped by a garden wolf. That's the first time you've ever heard that sentence in your life. And then got no head.
So no head?
Twice. Then, of course, we get to do my absolute favorite section in the game. The part where you play as Ashley, which includes such great moments as... and sliding puzzles, and everyone's favorite, QTEs. Man, I love QTEs. From there, we went to one of the strangest rooms in the game. I wonder if Jeff Bezos has a lava room. Like, is it something that you just get after you have a certain amount of money? You just can't think of anything else to buy? I got my cowboy blaster, went through a few more rooms. Ashley got kidnapped again, and honestly, it's probably the funniest way she gets kidnapped.
Ashley!
The rest of these areas went alright, smooth as I could have hoped for. That is, until the mines. The mines are technically part of the castle, but feel so different and bring back the village enemies that I've always kind of counted them as their own little section. Having said that, this area did not go smoothly. I had to do this section from the beginning roughly 4 times. The first time... The second time... Did I mention that I love QTEs? This was especially frustrating because if I'd managed this QTE, I would have finished the 2 chapters back to back. Instead, I had to reset all the way back to the beginning of the 2 chapters that take place in the mines, which is just especially frustrating. The third death, I'll just admit that I was playing badly at this point because I was so frustrated.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
So I quit for the night, came back the next day, and managed to get through it with only a little bug vomit in Leon's hair. Nice. I had to redo the Big Silly Statue segment because, oh god, QTEs, oh, they're so great. I'm glad that we came up with them. One of the best inventions in human history. Knocked some cultists off an elevator, then blew up a giant gremlin with a rocket launcher. After that, we obviously went to the island. Arguably considered the worst part in the game, even on normal and easy, the island is a special kind of hell to play through like this. When Sadler says,
"Arrive in my cage of torment, my friend,"
he fucking means it. So the first half of the island is actually fine. I did die at the wrecking ball part, which I've never been a huge fan of anyway, so obviously I had to restart a big chunk, which is not very fun. But that is nothing in comparison to the second half of the island, and especially the penultimate 2 chapters of the game that is just fucking Dicks in a bag. In these sections, you have the long-ass Krauser QTE knife fight, the two-stage fight with it, in which the first stage is just tedious and annoying on this stupid whatever the fuck this is. Then you have to do the actual fight with Krauser, which I've stated many times in this video how I feel about him, but Krauser fucking sucks. And then, after all of that, you have to do the gun turret section, which is just awful. It's awful. I call it the gun turret section. It's really the chopper section, but the main part about it that's awful is all the gun turrets that are around. This is the point where I admit that I gave up on this challenge. I wanted to finish the game in only 18 saves, but after redoing these sections like 6 or 7 times, I just decided to give up because there's just so much shit at this part in the game. I died to it. I died to Krauser. I had to redo the wonderful QTE knife fight, and then the QTEs in the it fight, and then the Krauser QTEs. Why do it and Krauser spam these goddamn QTEs so much? Just stop!
Stop it.
Get some help!
Get some help.
Then the game crashed. That was incredibly frustrating on its own. When you're already redoing this over and over again and then it just stops and it's not even your fault. Like, oh, that's fucking great. By this point I was so frustrated that I actually just got killed by a regular fucking head-ass whip Nene Plagas. Then I got grabbed by it and choked out, and I got so frustrated that I just reloaded, and so yeah, that counts as a death. The only solace I had was the part where you get to kill all these Ganados who just happen to be hanging around these explosive barrels, and you just get to blow them up again and again. It felt good every time I did it. It was just a sense of satisfaction and relief. War crimes, man, you can't get enough of them. I didn't say this earlier, but I was trying to beat Krauser with limited use of the knife, but I eventually just gave up on that. His fight is so hard just using guns. He really means it when he says,
"Prepare for your death, Leon."
Finally, I bought a rocket launcher to try that against Krauser and just flubbed a shot. I flubbed the shot multiple times. You can see me doing it here, and I just pause in shock that I fucked up that bad. And I think this is actually where I gave up. I just decided, fuck it, I'm throwing in the towel and just taking a continue. Then I got stabbed by Krauser in the chest. Then I flubbed another rocket launcher shot, because of course I would. Finally, I just decided to do the knife spam, and actually managed to catch him in it and beat the fight. Then I got to the gun turret section. Oh hey, look at that guy, at least he's having fun. I managed to get through the gun turret section on the first try, and the game fucking crashed. Dear God, why? So of course, my luck wasn't so good the second time. Of course, by this point, even though I'd gotten through the Krauser and it section, I was just fed up. So finally, I just gave up for the night and then came back the next day. I didn't reload each section of this final area. I still just wanted to reload to the typewriter, even though I'd kind of sacrificed that already. So when I came back the next day, I decided, fuck it. I'm going to try to start from the beginning of the Krauser It section again to see if I can actually do the limited saves. And I did it. Well, yes, I had to dodge its QTEs a million times again. Yes, I had to dodge a million of Krauser's grenades for some stupid reason. Yes, I had to push that stupid fucking statue around again. But things went so smoothly this time. I was in the fucking zone. I got through the gun turret section first try. Even if I did have to use a million health items to do so. I stopped and watched this for a moment. I got through one of the final enemy zones, and then I flubbed it. I pulled out the sniper rifle to try to get some headshots on low health, and the shots were not fast enough. The Hammer Bros smashed my fucking skull in, and I was absolutely devastated by this. I quit playing for a few hours and then came back later because I had made a save at the beginning of the gun turret section. I'd hoped I wasn't going to use it, but at this point I was just so defeated that I did. Oh, hey look, at least he found a friend and he's having a good time. I got through the gun turret part rather messily, got through the final few areas, was more careful around the stupid ass Hammer Brothers, beat Sadler, which yeah, still don't love his fight, and finally put this playthrough behind me with 20 saves and 16 deaths. I'm going to recount that later and then put on screen right here how many times I actually died. So, yeah. Professional is definitely the most consistent difficulty because everything will always be the same. But God, are some of those later parts just unreasonable. I like to think that the rocket launcher was added in and made as cheap as it is to be able to let you bypass bosses. And like that, I wouldn't be surprised if autosaves at the start of each area was added in to deal with some of the worst rooms of the game, like those at the tail end of the game. That's my big conspiracy theory. And yes, speedrunners can fly through the game in one playthrough fast, and I'm sure plenty of other people have beaten the game without a single death or a single save or anything. If I'd played more carefully or given myself more time for this challenge, I imagine I could have done it as well, like how I got the S+ in the remake. But at this point, I was just ready to be done and start working on the video. In the future, if I do decide to try this challenge again, I'll let you guys know and maybe even make a little video about it. But, having said that, it's time to wrap this up and move on to the final section of the video. Resident Evil 4 overall is an incredibly well-balanced experience, and it comes down to the parts of the game that don't actually change between difficulties. The weapons are accurate and well-balanced, which isn't completely true for the remake. The enemies consistently take stun and are opened up to melee hits very often, even on the hardest difficulty. The hardest rooms on easy are also the hardest rooms on normal and professional. Krauser sucks balls on easy, and sucks even more balls on normal and professional. Sadler's fight is just as tedious, no matter the difficulty. Honestly, most of the bosses in this game aren't great, but in the difficulty department, the worst is definitely Krauser. The rest are manageable. I also didn't mention the big Newt, but it just wastes your time, and it just wastes more of your time on the higher difficulties. No one really loves this boss, but it's a part of the game, and it's fine. As I mentioned earlier, the rocket launcher is only 30,000 pesetas in the original Resident Evil 4, which means almost every boss fight can be taken down with ease if you save up enough cash for it. Krauser is an exception to that, but I also didn't actually manage to hit him with the rockets because I suck. So if you don't enjoy the boss fights, you can basically budget to skip them, which I think is pretty clever and funny that they put that in the game. It's like, okay, put the rocket launcher in there, like the boss fights aren't great, let them just shoot him with the rocket launcher. And also for Krauser, you can do the knife cheese and like the village chief, he's weak to fire and stuff like that. It's a lot of clever stuff. And yes, even with all that in mind, you still do get overwhelmed. This game does have its own bullshit to deal with, like the archers and throwing enemies. The archers in both the remake and the original, goddamn, do they suck. The amount of times I've been hit by a stray arrow that just comes off screen like it's some kind of Monty Python comedy skit.
Message for you, son.
And the weapon throwing enemies are so much worse than the original. How many sickles do you have? Where are you even pulling them from? They're fucking infinite. Do the Plagas give these guys like a butthole of holding or some shit? That's a D&D reference. Like and subscribe, you fucking nerds. Getting stun locked is pretty rare in this game, but it can still happen. I think it mainly happens in the segments with the Novistadors where they can just crowd around you, though it's still pretty rare. The only other bullshit thing you deal with is the enemies going into an attack animation while you're still in an animation of some kind. Another thing is the fact that it takes Leon a moment to actually swing his knife after readying it, which is only really a problem in the Krauser fight, and I'm probably just bad, but god does this fucking suck. I'll say it one last time, fuck you, Krauser. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I'm going to be brave for a minute. I'm going to state a very brave opinion. I don't like QTEs. I know you must be shocked. I think they're bad. I know, groundbreaking opinion. Everyone clap your hands, I'm so brave. QTE means quick time event. It's basically the button thing where you mash a button or you press them during a cutscene. I understand why they existed, especially at the time that Resident Evil 4 came out. They were meant to allow you to do things during cinematic moments, so it felt like you were still playing, so it felt like you were part of the action. But in essence, all it does is make cutscenes annoying things that you have to overpay attention to. I think if you're already not paying attention to a cutscene, forcing a button prompt into it is not going to make people who aren't paying attention want to pay attention more. It's just going to get on their fucking nerves. Let me just watch a cutscene. I don't want to have the option to fail a cutscene. The right way to do QTEs is you've already done an action as a player and the button press actually confirms that type of action. Like where you jump up and like slice the parasite. That's a good use of a QTE. It feels empowering. QTEs are mostly fine unless you did the kind of challenge that I did, in which a failed QTE could set you back ages. Sometimes I'd fail the QTE and be so frustrated because I thought I nailed it, and now I've just lost 30 minutes of progress. QTEs just aren't fun and they don't really add much in the ways they're used in this game. I don't see how speedrunners put up with this. If I lost a run even though I was mashing my keyboard into fucking oblivion and the game just decided that Leon was going to fall, I'd probably just quit. Now that my QTE rant is over, let's talk about the balance of the different sections of the game. The village is still one of the best overall areas in the game. Not only is it the most fun to play, and it feels like it got the most attention and care to the way the different rooms and zones are designed, it's also spooky and fun. You're roundhouse kicking old people in the head. That's just fucking awesome. The castle is still pretty good. I think it starts to wane a little bit. There are some areas that just are a little bit tedious and things like that, but overall I still think it's a reasonable challenge and quite a fun area to get through. And the water hall, I used to give it a bad rep, but I actually think it's fine. I think it's a pretty reasonable challenge. Yes, you can get a little overwhelmed, but if you know what you're doing, you're going to make it through, and it's going to feel pretty good if you manage to kill enemies like this. And then the island. The island's fine for the most part. I know I gave it a lot of shit in this video, but it really is just the second half of the island that sucks really bad. I think the first part, when you're in the facilities, is actually pretty fun. Really, the worst parts of the game are in the island. It's the gun turret section, or the helicopter section as people call it. The It fight, the Krauser fight, it just doesn't feel as good as some of the earlier rooms, even in the island. It's not actually bad, like I said, it's just not as good as the best parts of the game. Some of it has to do with the difficulty, but some of it is just... The opening to the It fight is just really stupid and tedious, and this hanging bullshit. What even is this? What is this? What is the point of this? So, having said all that, is the original Resident Evil 4 too easy? No. No, it isn't. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I think this game is incredibly well balanced, and me calling it easy was clickbait. It does have its moments that aren't fun and are probably a little too hard. I've been talking about them pretty non-stop, but if I had to use that bullshit meter that I used in the previous video, it would definitely be leaning more towards the left than the right side of the bullshit meter. And yes, the later parts, the island specifically of the game, can be a little tedious, can be a little frustrating, but the enemies still take stun, they still get open to melee hits a lot. If you play really carefully, you can get through it after a good few tries. The guns are accurate, and if you play the game as it's meant to, reloading the autosaves, for the most part, I think you're going to have a good and easy time of it. The rooms are meant to be micro challenges. They're meant to be their own little thing. Easy difficulty is a great place to start just because it does remix the game in a way. They're very small changes, but if you go from playing easy to normal, you'll see the differences and you might be able to appreciate the extra areas more. Professional is a great difficulty, not only for its challenge, but also its consistency. Also, I'm just going to throw this here at the end. I might make another video about Resident Evil 4 and not talk about stuff like this too much, but the weapon feel in Resident Evil 4 is just fantastic. I specifically want to call out the shotguns. I think the shotguns in the original RE4 are so great because they just blow enemies around like they're an empty Walmart plastic bag in a windstorm, and that shit just rocks. The shotguns in the remake are just kind of okay in comparison. And I do have to throw one weapon under the bus. I know I said all of the weapons in the original are well balanced earlier, but there's one that fucking sucks, and it's the mine thrower. I don't even actually have any footage from playing this many times of me using the mine thrower. That's how bad it is. So yeah, Resident Evil 4 is incredibly fun. It's an incredibly well balanced game, even on the hardest difficulty, and just a really well thought out game overall in the way that it plays. Are the bosses great? No, they're just okay. But Resident Evil was never a series that people go to for fantastic boss fights. They go to them for cool boss fights, like the giant snake in the original Resident Evil. And like I said back a while ago, I do think it's funny that there's basically an option in the game to just skip most of the boss fights. If only they'd given us an option to skip the QTEs, but it was the early 2000s.
I hope you see where I'm coming from so I don't have to keep wasting my fucking time explaining it!
Again, go watch the Game Maker's Toolkit video on the adaptive difficulty. Go watch my difficulty video on the Resident Evil 4 remake if you haven't. Go watch my video on the Resident Evil 4 credits. That's also a banger. If you haven't played Resident Evil 4, I don't know why you're watching this. Go play it right now. It's one of the best games ever made. For newer players, I might actually recommend the remake first because it just plays a lot more like most modern games with the modern conveniences that come with modern games. And if you like that, or even if you're the type of person who you don't care about that, you want to play the original first, do it. I promise both of the games, the remake and the original, are worth it. They're both fantastic games. And last but not least, if I missed anything, let me know in the comments down below. I'm not perfect. I'm just faking it till I make it like anyone else. I am a YouTuber. I'm a dude sitting at a desk with a microphone. I'm in any number of things, but I'm not perfect. I'm GhostsOnHoliday. And remember that the Earth isn't flat or an orb. It's actually shaped like a pyramid. And at the tip of that pyramid is where God lives. But don't go there, because if you do, God will pick you up by the toes, sling you around over his head, and throw you into space, and we will never see you again. Bye-bye now.
Follow me.